everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I am so happy today to be here with a ray of sunshine, Jenny Watz, author of Self Editing. Make sure we can get it. Self Editing Made Easy, Strengthen Your Writing, and Edit with Confidence. Welcome to the show, Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about who Jenny is, right? Before we get into the book, and we don't want to tell them everything that's in the book, they need to write their own book. But you have a life before, or maybe I shouldn't say before. I think it was becoming who you are today in terms of how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in communications my entire life, my whole career, and I've worked in a variety of industries with diverse audiences. I've worked in advertising and public relations, and I've worked in uh, nonprofit. I've worked for agriculture companies. I've like financial companies, education. Like I mean everything. Um, and I got laid off in 2016, and that really was kind of an impetus for me. It was a catalyst for me to do something different and to do what I've always really loved to do, and that was working with words and books. And so I dove in and I started editing. I went back to school and got a professional certificate in editing, and that was eye opening in itself because I thought I knew English and grammar and am I a grammarian? No, but I knew enough to, be dangerous, right? And I got into this editing course and I realized there were a lot of things that I didn't know and there were a lot of things I thought I knew that weren't right. So I had to unlearn a lot of things and learn a lot of new things, and it was really eye opening and very, very interesting. And so I started editing manuscripts, mostly for self published authors, and it was great because I literally got paid to read books.
Mm.
Now, editing and reading are different, but I mean, you're still reading the book, but there's a little different skill set that's involved. But essentially, yeah, I got paid to read books, and then I branched out into ghostwriting, and I realized that with editing and with ghostwriting, there was a common theme, and that was that people struggle with how to accurately convey their message to their audience. That's when I started working as a book coach to kind of help bridge that gap and help people really get clear on their message and who they're speaking to and what they want their audience to know. So, as a former colleague used to say, to make a long story stop, uh, that that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing today. So,
Oh, I love that. So there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. Number one, I love that you decided I'm going to go into editing. I got laid off, but I'm not
mhm,
going to lay down. And so you furthered your education
mhm,
for the skill set that you wanted to operate in.
mhm,
So I love that because a lot of times we get laid off from jobs, reduction in force and all those
right,
fancy terms. And we kind of go into this depressed state when really that's your opportunity to grow. So I love that you did that. The other thing that I was just thinking about in terms of writing and editing, and I didn't realize this until I read your book, was that for me, as an author of, let's say, three books, two
mhm,
medical, one an autobiography,
mhm,
memoir, I was literally, every time I read the book from an editing perspective, I kept asking myself, am I telling, the truth about my story because I wanted to heal others while I was healing myself?
mhm,
But now that I'm writing my second book, I'm editing and reading, which, takes longer. And I
Mhm.
keep asking myself, what do I want the reader to feel? What do I want the reader to
Mhm.
experience? But I also, it's very important that I tell my own story because I want to be vulnerable enough to help others heal. And I
Mhm.
realized that I had this theme of wanting to help others heal. I'm not a healer, right? But I realized that I've gone through all my trials and tribulations for a reason. And so it is my responsibility to share that knowledge so that others know that they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know, I like to ask my authors, okay, so do you have something to say? And do you feel like what you have to say could help someone? So if you don't say it, how can you help that person? And even if you just have one person, that's one person, you know, and everyone matters. So that one person, it will mean a lot to them. So, you're selfish if you don't write a book.
Yes, you know what? And I read, lots of different books. I will say that as I've gotten older, I used to read the steamy novels, right?
Mhm.
And I think my first exposure to reading was actually Judy Blume.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's interesting that there was a screen adaptation of one of her books recently.
Mhm.
But I've evolved as a reader
Mhm.
where it's difficult for me to read the steamy book now. I need the books that speak to my mind and
Mhm.
speak to my heart, but more so my mind. Like, what can I learn from this book that I can use to help someone else? As
Mhm.
opposed to the steamy romance novel that, you know, that I may have had a glass of wine with, and it's like, whoa, wake up and I look up and it's like 3 in the morning. So I've evolved as a reader, but
Mhm.
nonetheless, I personally read because I was told I couldn't read.
Mhm.
And so I read in solidarity with those that were like me who were told, "Oh, you can't read, you can't comprehend what you're reading." But then also in college, graduate school in particular, my instructor said, "I don't know how you got this far in life. You're a horrible writer." And that moment didn't break me. What
Mhm.
it taught me was that's her interpretation of me.
Mhm.
Go and get some help. So I went to the writing center and they were like, no, your writing is just fine. You just need to organize your thoughts better, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm
Mhm.
not a person who uses all these big words. Like my husband, I swear, as a kid, he was reading through Webster, learning the different words. Because sometimes he'll say a word and I'm like, hold please, let me see what that word means. But for me, I'm the basic English words. I don't get too deep. But enough about that. Let's talk about the book. So first of all, I love the cover. I
Oh,
love the
thank you.
cover. I like how you've highlighted certain words. And let me get it in the camera.
Mhm.
So how you highlighted self, and then you put emphasis on writing, strengthening, confidence. Because I think,
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I'm 52.
Mhm.
I don't look a day over 25, but I grew up in the Chicago public school system, and
Mhm.
I don't feel like writing was a priority. I actually took a journalism class, right? And I took all these classes, but I don't really feel like I was taught how to write, how to edit with emphasis.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, there's a couple things there. So, first of all, writing is subjective, right? So, your writing style is not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. You don't want it to be for everyone. If you're for everyone, then you're for no one.
I
You
love it.
well, you can't please everybody, so stop trying. Um, eh, yeah, so for that person to say, "Oh, you're not a great writer," well, maybe to them, maybe your writing style just doesn't appeal to them. Like it took me forever. When I was in college, I remember we had I was in a literature class and we were reading Hemingway. I forget which Hemingway novel it was, but the professor asked us what we thought about it. And of course, it's college, nobody's saying anything, everybody's just sitting there. And so I finally raised my hand and I said, I thought it was kind of boring. And she looked at me and she said, Hemingway is anything but boring. Like I personally offended her. But,
Like she was related to Hemingway or something.
right? But at the time, Hemingway just like I didn't like his style of writing. Um, Also, not a huge Jane Austen fan. Sorry, I'm gonna get hate mail later or something. But like a lot of times, like it just and since then, like those styles have grown on me. But you know, not everybody is for everybody. Not every writing style is for everybody. So, to each their own. Yes, can we all improve? Absolutely. But no one is a terrible writer. They just haven't developed their craft yet. That's all. I grew up in the St. Louis public school system, so not too far. Um, and yeah, you're right. A lot of times writing is uh, not like they teach you how to write academically.
Yes.
And academic writing and writing, just like prose, literary fiction or nonfiction is so different. And I work with a lot of authors who come from academic backgrounds and kind of like you kind of have to, kind of beat that out of them.
You gotta reel them back in, right?
Right? No more research. Um,
Jenny, you know what? One of the things I love about 52 Authors, 52 Weeks is that we don't know each other. I
right.
probably know a tad bit more about you just from, reading the book.
Hmm.
But when I wrote my first book, my publisher one day said to me, I'll never forget, it was a Sunday evening, and she was like, email me the book, please. And I was like, okay. But this is the thing. I had some trauma associated with writing, not only that graduate school experience, but
Hmm.
when I was working on my dissertation,
Hmm.
I had to do hundreds of iterations of my research. And so
Hmm.
I didn't want to let go of it. Like, I was just like, I'm not sending it to her until it is perfect.
Right. Yeah.
I'm glad that's over. We're not doing it that way this time. I'm really glad that I was able to break. I don't want to call it a curse, but I was
Hmm.
able to break that mindset and realize that I wasn't writing a dissertation. I was writing about my life, and I needed to move forward so that I can get it published.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no such thing as perfect. And, I will say, though, that as writers, when you're writing a manuscript, before you send it to an editor or your publisher, it's important that you make sure it's in good shape. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be a quality manuscript. Like don't hand them a first draft, you know.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
and
and
make
you
sure at the very least run it through spell check. My goodness, I've had manuscripts come across my desk that had no business being on my desk.
well, I have the Grammarly app on my
Hmm.
desktop, and we kind of fight with each other because sometimes it'll want to change something, and I'm like, no, I don't want to say it that way. I want to say it the way
Right.
that I said it, right?
Hmm.
So, but I'm grateful for those different tools, and I will tell you now, my process is very, I would say, regimented to the extent that okay, I'm like, I have this particular concept in every chapter. It's there for a reason. Okay,
Hmm.
let me go through and just read those parts. um okay, I have a story in each chapter. Was there
Hmm.
some overlap from one chapter to the next? Really being intentional, where the first book I didn't do that. And I keep waffling back and forth.
Mhm.
Do I do a second edition or do I focus on the new book? Right. I keep having these conversations with myself in the middle of the night. And right now I've decided to just move forward.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the book. And I want to start off with something that most of us did not know, which is the types of editing. Talk
Mm.
to us about that.
Yeah, there are several different types of editing. And, a lot of people, when they hear the word editing, they just think, oh, you're going to fix my typos. And yeah, that's part of it, but that's not the main part of it. So, the three types of editing, main types of editing, are developmental, line editing, and copy editing. And I like to view those as kind of like uh, building a house. So developmental editing, sometimes called structural editing, sometimes called substantive editing. Like it just depends on who you talk to. Um, it's like the house foundation, right? It needs to be solid. So developmental editing is where you really map out the premise of the book, make sure you have all of the pieces in place that you want, like your core messaging, your supporting messaging, just the organization of everything, just making sure like your foundation is solid for your book. Then there's line editing, which is kind of like building the walls, right? So it's like making sure that your sentences flow, kind of like like the flow of a house, like the pattern, the walking pattern. It's not walking pattern. It's I don't know. It's called something else, but it's like the path of the house, like how traffic flow, right? How do you
Hmm.
get seamlessly from one room to the next? And that's kind of like line editing. So it's looking more at like the style, the word choice, things like that, sentence, you know. Short sentences, long sentences, just kind of like the combination and just how well it reads. It's like um, it has to have a cadence to it, like it's got a 45, you can dance to it kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then copy editing is kind of like that's the walkthrough, kind of like where you're like looking for um, anything that might be out of place. Does this light switch need to move over, or like different things like that. So it's kind of like, and that's where you really focus on repetitive words, um, uh, you know typos, things like that. Just more like verb choice, things like that. So those are the three main types of editing, and then there's proofreading, which is different. Proofreading generally happens after the manuscript has been um, through editing and has been formatted and laid out and everything. It's really the final step before you hit the publish button. So proofreading mainly is to catch those typos and to make sure that nothing shifted, like formatting wise, after it's been all laid out, in book format. Because like sometimes it's kind of like, oh, see the graph on the left. Well, maybe during formatting, it's now underneath the text instead of on the left. Like those are the things you catch in proofreading sometimes. So those are the different styles of editing and proofreading. And depending on who you ask, editors, like, there's no universal consensus to editing. Different editors will describe it differently. Um, and like I said, like developmental editing, some call it structural editing, so that's why it's important to talk to an editor and make sure you're, on the same page. Um, where it comes to editing, so you know what to expect from them, and what you're getting, like what you envision the editor doing and what they're actually going to do. So that's the editing process. It's complicated, and again, you have to talk to your editor and really understand how they approach it.
Well, and you said complicated, but it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because you gave the house analogy. I'm sitting in my house
Mhm.
that was built in 98.
Mhm.
And it makes sense that you lay the foundation first.
Mhm.
And my husband is in construction, so he talks about this all the time.
Mhm.
No, the electricians can't come in and do this until this part is done. And
Right.
I see it as really putting your infrastructure in place in terms
Mhm.
of what this book is all about, right? And you're continuing to develop it as you go along with the editing process. And I
Right.
like that because I have to force myself to stay in one lane. So this is what I do. I print the book out. Okay, don't judge me, Jenny. Don't judge me. Okay, so I print the book out, Jenny,
Mhm.
and then, but I print it out at Office Max. I have them spiral bounded together.
Mhm.
And then I take it and I go to Starbucks and I have a cup of tea and I just start to read it from, one page to the next, kind of
Mhm.
line by line.
Mhm.
And I am reflecting and laughing and like, oh no, you don't want to say that, right? And I'm going through this whole process and it makes complete sense to edit in a structured manner just because my brain operates that way.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you why it makes sense. My first book, I decided, oh, I'm going to make an audio book. So I go to the studio to record. And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, that's not grammatically correct. So I'm on the spot reading the book and changing the words.
Mhm.
And so after each chapter, after I came out of the booth, the what do you call him? Engineer was like,
Yeah. Audio
on
engineer.
such and such page, that's not what it says. I'm like, I know,
Mhm.
but it didn't sound right. So one of the things that for me reflecting, I said, the next book, I don't have to go to a studio to read it, but I'm going to sit in front of the camera and just
Mhm.
read it so that then I will play it back and listen and read at the same time because I learned from the first experience.
Mhm.
But I enjoy doing it because I'll go sit in Starbucks with the book, version 25, with my headphones, with my reading music, and I'm
Mhm.
just really enjoying the read and the
Yeah.
experience. So it doesn't feel so frustrating. But for other folks, they need you because they don't want to do what Lisa's doing. So let's talk about, well, maybe they do, but let's talk a little bit in the book on page 35.
Okay.
You talk about editing your own work. So you've
Mhm.
decided, this is the person who's watching and listening to this. You've decided you're going to edit your own book. What are some things that they need to know?
First of all, the
Hire an
self-editing.
editor.
Well, yeah, there's that. And actually, that's what I was getting ready to say. So, self-editing is crucial. Like I said before, you want to make sure you hand your publisher or publish the most well put together book that you can. So part of that process it is editing and self-editing. It self-editing is not a replacement for a professional editor, though. And one of the reasons for that is because your brain automatically knows what you wrote or what's supposed to be there. So sometimes you can read something, and if a word is missing, your brain will put it in there anyway because it knows it's supposed to be there. Um, kind of like if you're reading something and like the word the or a is missing, your brain will insert it there because it knows it's supposed to be there. So getting a fresh set of eyes on that is always a good thing. So that's one thing. Um, if you're going to self-edit, one of the things I suggest doing, and like you already hinted at that you do, is read it aloud. Read your book out loud. You can either, um, you know, read it yourself out loud. You can have someone read it to you, or you can even use the text to speech, whatever it's called, app. Uh, One's built into Word. There's also one, I think it's an extension in Chrome. So if you're using Google Docs, um, but have the computer read it back to you. Um, and what that does is it helps you hear where things might be missing. It helps you hear if there's a lot of redundancy, or, like, you said the word however 14 times in the last, minute and a half.
Mhm.
Um, or if it's reading along and all of a sudden you stumble over some words or something, that's an indication that maybe you need to revisit that and reword it, or help the sentence flow better. Because if someone's stumbling over it as they're reading it, that's an indication that it can probably be said in a different way that is going to enhance it. So that's something I like people to know when they're self-editing. Is that's a really crucial step, is to read it out loud, so you can hear it.
Oh yes, let me tell you,
Yeah.
Jenny, in that booth, I know, and I had 12 chapters. And first of all, the sound engineer was like, I'm surprised how many chapters you were able to read in a day." He
Mm,
said normally people, it's like 3 chapters one day and they're done. But
mhm,
I guess because I do a lot of speaking, that I
yeah,
can speak for a long time. But literally, I was like looking at the words, and I was like, "Oh, no." In my head, I was like, "That word is
mhm,
missing." And so I just
yeah,
I inserted it where it was supposed to be. But
yeah,
then the problem with that was that I had to go back and figure out where I was inserting these words so that I could update the manuscript. Because at the
mhm,
time I was thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna do a second version." But I've moved on from that,
yeah,
again, because I'm literally just going to record myself reading the hard copy for now.
mhm,
All right. So let's talk a little bit about word usage. This is the one I think that Grammarly and I fight the most with. And
mhm,
again, because I don't use extremely big words, I
mhm,
call them fancy words.
yeah,
And
the
I
50-cent words.
yeah, I struggle with that. So talk to
Mhm.
us a little bit about word usage.
Yeah, so part of your struggle with Grammarly is retaining your voice, right?
Yes,
Um,
Lisa voice, not Grammarly voice.
right. And like sometimes Grammarly, they like to be very professional, like not use contractions and things like that. I don't know anyone who does not speak in with contractions, like doesn't speak in contractions. Like it's the normal flow of just your voice, right? And so sometimes those things can try to strip away your true voice. And so word usage is really important. And let's see. So I'm looking at the word usage chapter, and eschew, obfuscation, and espouse elucidation. So
Yeah, I was
basically,
like, "What is that?"
yeah, keep it simple. You know, um,
Oh, let me write that down. Let me write that down, folks. When you get your own copy of the book, let me see what page. That's 49. Okay, I want you to write that down at the
yes,
top.
page
Keep it
49.
simple.
Yeah, basically keep it simple. So, you know, a lot of people, they like to use a lot of words. It's like, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS, right? And a lot of times that's what people do when they're writing a book, like, oh, I need more words here. I need more words here. And so they just start adding words that don't mean anything. And a lot of times, just keep it simple, keep it clear. You don't need 400 words to say something, when 10 will do. Like, what is the quote?
Mm.
Uh, let's see. It was from, uh, it was from Mark Twain, and I'm gonna botch it, but basically it's like, why would I write policeman when I can write cop and get paid the same amount? you know?
Oh my gosh, that you know what? That really is so important to highlight, because I know when I'm reading my or I'm fighting with Grammarly and it wants to change a word,
Mhm.
and you talked about voice, I'll say, "No, Grammarly." No, I'm not. It doesn't respond back, right? I'm just
Right.
saying, "No, Grammarly, I don't want to use that word because that's not how I would say it."
Mhm.
And because again, I am really thinking about how I want the reader to experience the words.
Mhm.
I am taking it from the perspective of that maybe my reader really needs this information. And if I use these fancy
Mhm.
words, they're not going to get the message. And I want them
Right.
to get the message.
Right. Yeah, you have to speak to where your audience is, right? I never like to say dumb it down because I don't know. I just don't like the phrasing of that. I like to say make it relatable. You know, you need to make things relatable to your audience, and if your audience isn't you know made up of people who use those 50-cent words, then don't use 50-cent words because
Yes.
then you're just going to alienate them, or they're going to have to sit there reading your book with a dictionary next to them, and well, ain't nobody got time for that, right? Uh, you know,
Not at all.
like reading is supposed to be fun, and it's like a lot of people read to relax. Okay, if I have to look up every other word, I am not relaxing. You know,
Absolutely.
or if I'm reading something and I don't understand what you're saying, like that's not fun, you know. So yeah, you need to make it an enjoyable experience for your reader, and the way to do that is to use relatable words. So yeah, word choice is essential, and it's I talk in the book about like redundant words, and I use like so I'm looking here. Joe is now employed at a golf course working as a caddy. Okay,
So what?
okay. First of all, yeah. So what? Who cares? Good for Joe, right? But it's like okay. So it's like now employed working as a caddy. I mean, if he's employed, we know he's working. So like we don't need to say all of that, right? So you can say he works at a golf course as a caddy. Boom, done.
We know
Um,
he's working because he could be volunteering, but the assumption is that
yeah,
he's working.
he works as a caddy. Okay.
Yes.
So, and also you might not even need golf course because where else are you going to caddy? I mean,
Unless maybe you're trying to introduce the golf world to
yeah,
someone, then it would be appropriate. And that goes back to knowing your audience.
exactly. But there's a lot of times we use, like empty phrases. So I worked with a coach at one point on a book, and I had to help him understand that a lot of what he was saying was actually minimizing his authority and credibility. Because he would
Mm,
start out saying, "Well, I think that blah 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 blah," and it's like, "You're writing this book. These are your words. We already know these are your thoughts. Like, you don't have to tell us what you think because the fact that you're writing this is your thought." Like,
mm, mm, mm.
um, and also if you want to be credible, don't tell somebody you think something. Say you know something, or you believe this to be true. So again, it's word choice, and empty and like inflated words and phrases. At the present time, why don't you just say now?
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, again, keep
Yes.
it simple. So that's what I mean by word choice. It's just um, and also like weak verbs is another one, right? So I was thinking about the job offer. I thought about the job offer. You know, you don't need to say all of those things. So yeah, that's
Oh, Jenny, when I go into Starbucks today, I'm gonna have Jenny all in my head as I am reading. Because I'm literally probably on this is something else that I did just to allow myself to heal during the experience. I'm keeping every draft in a
mhm,
bag. Now, okay,
mhm,
don't judge me, Jenny, but when I go to Starbucks, I have all the drafts in a
mhm,
bag.
mhm,
And I'm sitting there with the most recent version because sometimes I've taken something out
mhm,
and I'm like, wait a minute, you know what? What you said actually works really well here. So let's put
mhm,
that back in.
mhm,
So I'm really enjoying it, but I gotta have a cutoff period where it leaves my computer because I will get I'm not gonna say I'm in too deep. I got to pull myself back out, or the book will never be published. Which is why the last thing I want to talk about is how to find a professional editor, because you're right. And I get it. Cost is always a factor for some
Mhm,
people who say, I can't pay for an editor. I'm going to read it. I'm going to have my cousin read it. My cousin is an English teacher. And then I'm
mhm,
just going to put my book out into the world. But I think that you really need to self reflect and think about your own personal why. So for me, I want to have an editor. Why?
mhm.
Because when I am speaking professionally and I mention my book and someone goes on to Amazon and orders the book and receives the book, they will say, "Whoa, right? This is really well
Mhm,
written. We want to
mhm.
bring her in for XYZ." So it's about your brand. So for me,
Yeah.
it's really about branding.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say, you'll know good editing when you don't see it.
Mm. Mm.
So, have you ever like read a book and like all of a sudden like all of the errors are just like glaring, like,
Oh, Jenny, I try not to, on social media they say we listen but we don't judge.
right.
So I try to do read but don't judge. It's
Mhm.
hard because you're like, I
Yes.
think they meant such and such. Okay, just keep going, keep
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah. Well, and again, there's exceptions to every rule, right? So, it's there no book is going to be perfect. There's always going to be errors. There's a couple of errors in my book. There was one that was like so glaring. I'm like, oh, I can't live with this. Like, I can't sleep at night. So I had to change it. I had to work with my publisher. I'm like, no, we gotta you know, we gotta fix this and put it back up because it's not right. So I mean, there's always going to be something. You have to. It's like, what can you live with, right? Um, but to find an editor, there are several different things. First of all, you want to work with an editor who has experience working with books in your genre.
Mm.
You don't want to hire an editor who edits, um, nonfiction books only, but you've written an epic fantasy, like, because those are two different things entirely. One is going to focus a lot on like world building and like how you've developed your characters and things like that, whereas the other one is going to say, is your message being conveyed properly, and is your call to action clear, like what you want your readers to do after they read your nonfiction book. So like, I mean, there's two different skill sets. And you also, I mean, yeah, I can appreciate that, your cousin's friend's mom is an English teacher or whatever, but again, knowing English is not the same as editing a novel or editing a manuscript. It's like when I went back to school for editing, it's like I had to unlearn a bunch of stuff. And there's also different styles. So, like most like newspapers and media outlets use Associated Press style, whereas most manuscripts publishers use Chicago Manual style. There are nuanced differences with those things. So it's knowing, like, a lot of people, or they're used to, like, MLA and
APA.
right, right. And I mean, that's different if you're publishing a book. Most publishers use Chicago Manual style. So if someone is used to, like, just AP, they've always written for newspaper, it's like, oh no, we don't use the serial comma. Well, in publishing, they do. So it's just little nuanced things like that. Um, but also, you want to, as I mentioned earlier, there are different types of editing, and every editor has a different description of what they are. So it's important to talk to your editor and make sure that you are of the same understanding of how they approach editing and what you're expecting of them, and like make sure those match. Um, and talk about cost, talk about how they edit. Do they edit in Microsoft Word? Do they edit in Google Docs? Do they edit in PDF only? Hopefully not. um, but you want to make sure that whatever they're editing in, like if they're using Microsoft Word track changes, you understand how to use Microsoft Word track changes, because when they send the manuscript back to you and you're looking at all of these edits, do you know what to do with them? You know, um, and it's really a partnership. Like your editor, their job is to help you publish the best manuscript that you can, and so it's imperative that you work together, and that's why I like people to be able to get a sample edit when they can, to to understand how the editor works, how they might ask questions of you, like, I'm not sure what you meant here, kind of thing. Um, so it's important to understand how they work and make sure that you can work with their style. Um, and if you are going to, I don't know, reach out to several different editors and ask, kind of see who you like best, make sure that you give them the same text to edit so you can compare apples to apples.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I mean that's really important. Like a lot of people will, not a lot of people, but some people will try to, like they'll, uh, interview editors and give them some sample text to edit, and they give each editor a different section to edit, and then just put their book together, say, well, what's edited? I got sample edits of everything, and so I edited the book. And that's what we call in the industry a Franken edit, where it's just cobbled together, by
Yes.
different people. And don't do that, because, like I said, every editor has a different approach, and it's going to be really obvious to the reader. And
Mhm.
it's not going to be a good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
like you have to you have to have your expectations, right? And
mhm,
then you can evaluate the two different editors of that one content against your expectations, and then that could help you understand how you want to proceed. So it's kind of like
exactly.
um getting a second opinion on a car repair,
Hmm.
right? You're going to take the same car,
Right.
same problem. You're not going to take a different car and expect a different outcome.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you can use it.
Okay, I will. I'll use the car analogy. You're not going to wreck it again and take it somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. So, Jenny, we are out of time, but
Yes, we are.
before we go, I have two questions I would like to ask you.
Okay.
Number one, where can our listening, viewing audience find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Jenny Watts. That's WATZ. They can find me on Facebook. I have a personal profile where I accept friends, and I also have a business page, Jenny Watts Consulting, on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, uh, and I have a Facebook group called Write the Damn Book.
Oh, I love it. Write the damn book.
Write the damn book, and it's for entrepreneurs. But yeah, the first part is write the damn book. So I would love for people to join me there as well. I'm all over the place. So
I love it. You know, it's so weird. I don't know about you, but I feel at 52, I know way too much about this social media business. Like, um, I didn't want to get on TikTok, but my social
mhm,
media manager was like, "You got to get on TikTok." I'm like, "I don't want to
mhm.
get on TikTok." Like, "You got to get on TikTok." So guess what? Now I'm on TikTok.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be 55 next month, and I am not on TikTok, and I feel like, like I didn't grow up with any of this stuff, right? And so I get annoyed every time like a new platform shows up, like Blue Sky. And I was like, really, I got to learn something else. Like, just stop with all the different social media platforms. I can't deal with it all. Um,
Yes. So then my last question before we go is, what does the future hold for Jenny Watts?
what does the future hold? I actually am finishing up my next manuscript. That will be published in probably sometime this fall. There's no specific release date yet. And it is designed for entrepreneurs to help them write their book, help them write the damn book. Yeah, so it's going to be, kind of how that whole writing process goes, and how you can actually, get out of your head and get your book written. Yeah.
Well, this episode will air in the fall. So
Okay.
now I'm holding you accountable for getting the book done before the end of the year, before the end of
Yeah.
2025. How about that?
My publisher thanks you for that.
Pay me later.
Okay.
Well, listen, Jenny, I want to thank you so much for being willing to be a part of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I
Mm,
wish you the best of luck in your future. You just reminded me of the Chicago style, the manual style. You know, I'm in
mhm,
Chicago, right? So the Chicago manual style. But what I want to say to the person who is like, I really want to write a book, you got to just get started. You cannot
mhm,
just think about all these things that we talked about today and
mhm,
allow that to deter you from getting started, because it is such a freeing experience when you start to write. It's
mhm,
kind of addictive, right?
mhm,
Where you're like, oh, I got to write this down. Oh, I want to say this. It just really helps for me. It helped me heal in
mhm.
ways I never expected.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It's very freeing, and it is very it's cathartic.
Yes, it
So yeah,
is. It
yeah.
is.
Thank you. This has been a great a great time. I really enjoy getting to know you, and I enjoy our conversation very much.
Yes, and I'm sure that this conversation is not over. So, listen, everyone, thank you so much for watching another episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. We will see you next week.
All right. Thanks.